The torchlight flickered against damp stone as Thomas pressed his trembling hand to the prisoner's throat. The narrator explained how his pulse thundered louder than the distant war drums. Captain Aldrich, a stern man with iron-gray hair, said, "Do it, boy. The crown demands loyalty, not hesitation." Thomas swallowed hard, his eyes darting to the prisoner's terrified face. The man whispered, "You carry royal blood, lad. They fear you, not me." The words pierced deeper than any blade. Thomas staggered back, his chest tight as if history itself leaned upon him. Aldrich barked, "Weakness will kill us all." Thomas whispered, "Or truth will free us," and the room fell into silence heavier than chains. The narrator spoke of Thomas pacing the barracks courtyard beneath a cold moon, every creak of leather straps echoing in his ears. He tried to steady his breath, but the words of the prisoner haunted him. His friend William, a soldier with fiery hair and restless eyes, said, "You look like death himself whispered to you." Thomas forced a hollow laugh, muttering, "Maybe he did." William's grin faltered as the night wind carried distant drums, and the bells of the cathedral tolled. The narrator revealed how fear gnawed at Thomas's resolve, yet a strange fire sparked in his chest. History seemed to whisper that silence was no longer his ally. The narrator described the dim barracks interior, where smoke from a dying fire curled upward. Thomas sat hunched on a bench, staring into the embers. He whispered, "Royal blood, lies meant to break me." His hand trembled against the wood. Captain Aldrich entered, heavy boots thudding, and said, "Strength is silence, lad. Speak no word of what you heard." His eyes bore into Thomas with ruthless authority. The narrator told how Thomas's voice caught in his throat as he answered, "Silence may strangle truth." Aldrich's shadow stretched across the floor like a blade, sealing the warning. Fear and defiance waged their quiet war in the flicker of dying light. The narrator described dawn creeping over the fortress walls, painting stones gold. Thomas leaned on the parapet, eyes hollow, when William approached with 2 cups of stale ale. William said, "You look like a man carrying ghosts." Thomas murmured, "Maybe ghosts carry me." Their laughter was thin, swallowed quickly by the clang of armor in the yard. The narrator revealed Thomas's chest tight with a secret too heavy for words, while William's easy manner masked a hunger for advancement. Drums rolled faintly from the hills, a reminder that politics and war cared little for friendship. The sun's first rays cut the cold air, but shadows still ruled Thomas's heart. The narrator showed Thomas alone in the chapel, kneeling before a cracked altar where candles sputtered weakly. He whispered, "If I am heir, then curse or crown follows." His voice cracked, filled with desperation. The stained glass above cast fractured colors across his face. Father Gregory, a priest with weary eyes, placed a hand on his shoulder, saying, "Burden or blessing the Lord does not choose lightly." Thomas's heart pounded as he stared at the flickering flame, imagining kingdoms rising and falling within its glow. The narrator warned that destiny had already chosen him, and there was no path back to the quiet life he craved. The narrator described the grand hall filled with flickering lanterns, where nobles whispered behind jeweled masks. Thomas walked silently, his simple tunic drawing curious stares. William nudged him, saying, "Careful, these wolves smell weakness." Thomas's throat tightened as the Chancellor, Lord Merrick, greeted him with false warmth. "A soldier among lords," Merrick said, voice dripping with charm. Yet his eyes gleamed like steel beneath candlelight. The narrator told how Thomas's every step echoed louder than the drums beyond the castle walls. He felt history pressing upon him, as though secrets traveled in the very smoke rising from the braziers. The narrator told of the feast, beginning with silver platters of meat and goblets of red wine, but tension soured the air. Thomas sat uneasily, avoiding Merrick's calculating stare. William leaned close, whispering, "They plot more with words than swords." Across the table, Lady Isolde, draped in velvet, asked sweetly, "What secrets does a young guard keep from the crown?" Thomas stammered, his chest tightening. The narrator revealed the silence as heavier than armor, broken only by laughter too sharp to be honest. He knew every gaze tested his strength, and every word weighed more than iron. The narrator described how the hall quieted when Marek rose, lifting a goblet high. His voice cut through the air like a blade. Loyalty is the foundation of kingship. Eyes turned to Thomas, and his stomach churned. William's knuckles whitened around his cup. The nobles clapped politely, but whispers slithered beneath the applause. Thomas felt as though chains bound his throat. Marek's gaze lingered, his smile sharpened, and he said, "The crown rewards silence, yet silence hides treachery." The narrator revealed Thomas's heart pounding, knowing the prisoner's words still burned inside him. He wondered if Marek already suspected. The narrator described the courtyard after the feast, where the night was cold and mist curled along the stones. Thomas leaned against the wall, heart pounding. William said, "They circle you like vultures. What are you hiding?" Thomas turned sharply, whispering, "I hide nothing." Yet his voice cracked. William's gaze hardened, his boyish grin fading into suspicion. The narrator told how a friendship built on shared battles began to fracture. Somewhere in the distance a raven called, and the toll of the cathedral bell carried through the fog. Secrets weighed heavier than steel upon Thomas's shoulders. The narrator showed Thomas slipping quietly into the archive chamber, where shelves of ancient scrolls loomed in candlelight. His hands shook as he unrolled a parchment bearing the crest of the crown. He whispered, "Is this the truth they hide?" Footsteps echoed, and he froze. A cloaked figure emerged, face shadowed, voice calm. "Some truths are meant for the grave." The narrator revealed the chilling weight of those words, the sense of being hunted by secrets written long before he was born. The flame trembled in the draft, casting long shadows across forgotten history. The narrator described the fortress courtyard beneath a blood-red sunset, where Thomas sparred with William as soldiers trained nearby. Each clang of steel felt heavier than the last, echoing his inner turmoil. William laughed, saying, "You fight like your mind is elsewhere." Thomas forced a smirk, though his grip faltered. The air stilled when Captain Aldrich strode in, his glare cutting sharper than blades. "Discipline," he barked, though his eyes lingered too long on Thomas. The narrator revealed the weight of suspicion growing, and how every blow of practiced steel was a battle, not just of arms but of secrets unspoken. The narrator told how night fell over the barracks, shadows long across the floor. Thomas sat sharpening his blade when William leaned against the doorframe, voice low, "You hide something from me." Thomas froze, blade pausing mid-stroke. "Secrets weigh heavier than steel," he muttered, but William's eyes narrowed. The narrator revealed the flicker of betrayal beneath friendship. As William said, "I would not forgive being lied to." Outside, a horn sounded, distant but haunting, and Thomas felt the world closing in. Trust was no longer certain, and every shadow seemed to stretch with unseen threats. The narrator described Thomas slipping through a hidden passage beneath the chapel, torchlight flickering across ancient stone. His breath was shallow as scrolls lay scattered around him. A cloaked figure stepped from darkness, voice steady, "The truth you seek is bound in silence." Thomas whispered, "Who are you?" The figure's hood tilted, revealing only a shadowed jawline, and replied, "A guardian of secrets long buried." The narrator told how Thomas's pulse quickened, torn between fear and trust. He felt the weight of destiny and the torch smoke curling like a crown above his head. The narrator described a midnight council in the great hall. Nobles gathered with hushed voices. Marek raised his hand, declaring, "The kingdom must purge traitors before dawn." Thomas stood among them, silent yet burning inside. William sat opposite, gaze distant, as though weighing loyalty against ambition. The narrator revealed how suspicion spread like wildfire, every eye glancing with hidden malice. Marek's words curled like poisoned smoke. "A snake hides within these walls." Thomas's fists clenched, for he knew the whisper of truth already marked him. The weight of the hall threatened to crush him beneath invisible chains. The narrator showed Thomas standing alone on the fortress wall, wind whipping his hair as storm clouds gathered. He whispered, "If blood binds me to the throne, then shadows will claim me first." Lightning flashed, carving the sky in silver. Behind him, the cloaked figure appeared silently, saying, "Destiny hunts you, but you can choose how to face it." Thomas turned, eyes filled with fear and defiance. The narrator revealed how the storm mirrored his soul, torn between running from the crown or seizing it. The drums of war rolled faintly from the hills, promising a reckoning soon. The narrator described the archive chamber lit by wavering candles, where Thomas unrolled a parchment sealed with the royal crest. His hands shook, as golden ink revealed a bloodline long hidden. He whispered, "This cannot be true." The cloaked figure stepped closer, voice low, "You are the king's son, hidden for fear of blades sharper than truth." Thomas's chest heaved as the words struck. He felt chains fall, and new ones bind in the same moment. The narrator revealed the crack of thunder overhead, as though the heavens bore witness to his unmasking. History no longer whispered, it screamed. The narrator described Thomas storming into the courtyard under pounding rain, clutching the parchment. William intercepted him, face tight with suspicion. "What truth do you clutch so dearly?" he demanded. Thomas held back, saying, "It is not for your ears." William's eyes narrowed, and his voice cut sharp, "You trust shadows more than me." The narrator revealed betrayal's seed blooming, as William's hand brushed his sword hilt. The storm above raged with every heartbeat, lightning carving the night sky while the first fracture of friendship became a weapon waiting to strike. The narrator told of the great hall filled with nobles as Merrick's voice thundered, "A pretender rises among us." All eyes turned as William stepped forward, pointing toward Thomas. Gasps echoed under the vaulted ceiling. Thomas's chest tightened, his hand gripping the parchment. He shouted, "I am no pretender, I am heir by blood." Merrick sneered, "Bloodstains, boy, it does not crown." The narrator revealed the clash of truth and deceit, the hall trembling with murmurs. For the first time, Thomas stood unflinching, as though lightning itself had struck courage into his soul. The narrator described chaos as nobles rose shouting, some with fear, others with fury. Aldrich's voice cut through the noise. "The boy speaks truth. I have kept his bloodline hidden for years." Gasps shook the chamber as Merrick's face paled, fury breaking his mask. Thomas's heart raced, his chest burning with revelation. He turned to Aldrich and whispered, "You knew all along?" Aldrich's gaze was heavy with regret. "I guarded you, but the time for hiding is gone." The narrator revealed a tide shifting, loyalties fracturing like glass under weight, as the crown's secret heir stood unveiled. The narrator showed Thomas standing before the throne, water dripping from his clothes, his breath ragged. The hall had emptied, leaving silence and shadows. The cloaked figure stepped from behind the throne, voice echoing, "Now you know your place, but power draws daggers in the dark." Thomas stared at the empty seat, whispering, "This crown is both curse and claim." The narrator revealed how the throne loomed not as a promise, but as a battlefield of blood and betrayal. Lightning lit the stained glass, casting fractured crowns across the stone floor. The narrator described the War Council chamber, its oak table scarred by years of conflict. Maps lay unrolled, ink marking enemy positions. Thomas stood stiffly, voice unsteady as he said, "If I am heir, then I must act." Aldrich leaned forward, eyes sharp, claiming truth is not enough, you must raise swords to defend it. William sat apart, silence heavier than chains, his gaze unreadable. The narrator revealed how the air seemed to thrum with tension, as though the walls themselves braced for war. Beyond the stone windows, drums echoed from the hills, and with them came the first whisper of rebellion. The narrator described dawn over the training yard, where soldiers clashed in drills. Thomas watched, fists clenched, as Aldrich barked orders. "They must see you as more than a boy," Aldrich said. Thomas stepped forward, drawing steel, his voice firm. "Then they will see me fight." Blades rang as he sparred against seasoned men, his breath ragged yet unyielding. William muttered from the edge, "Courage is easy to wear until blood is spilled." The narrator revealed how soldiers paused, eyes drawn to Thomas not as a farmer, but as something rising, forged by fire and duty. The narrator described the marketplace, abandoned under threat of war, stalls overturned, and banners torn. Thomas walked with the cloaked figure, who whispered, "The people will rally if they believe you are their shield." Thomas hesitated, muttering, "What if I cannot bear the weight?" The figure's reply cut like steel, "Then history will bury you nameless." The narrator revealed how whispers of hope drifted from shuttered windows, even as fear clung to the streets. The sound of distant hoofbeats carried news of armies gathering, pressing destiny against Thomas like a blade against his throat. The narrator described the fortress chapel, where Thomas knelt again before flickering candles. His whisper was fierce now, "If destiny is mine, let it be carried with steel." Father Gregory stood beside him, voice weary but steady. "A crown is both burden and blade, but faith may steady your hand." Thomas rose, shoulders squared, no longer shrinking beneath his secret. The narrator revealed how firelight painted him, not as a peasant but as something greater. Beyond the walls, thunder rolled, as though the heavens prepared to witness a kingdom's reckoning. The narrator showed the fortress walls at twilight, soldiers gathering in lines with shields glinting faintly. Aldrich raised his sword, voice booming, "We march at dawn." Thomas stood beside him, parchment tucked into his belt, gaze fixed on the horizon. William lingered near the rear, his expression unreadable, shadows masking his thoughts. The narrator revealed the silent storm of loyalty and betrayal, each man carrying secrets as heavy as their armor. From the distant hills came the steady beat of war drums, each strike a heartbeat of history. The air trembled with the promise of blood and crown. The narrator described dawn breaking with fire on the horizon, as armies gathered outside the fortress walls. Shields glinted, banners whipped violently in the wind, and war drums thundered like a heartbeat of doom. Thomas gripped his sword, whispering, "Let truth cut deeper than fear." Aldrich raised his voice, "Today we fight not for kings but for the future itself." William stood nearby, face unreadable, eyes cold as steel. The narrator revealed how destiny pressed on every breath, and silence fell before the storm. For one heartbeat, the world waited, trembling on the edge of blood and history. The narrator described the clash of steel as armies collided, the sound of battle deafening. Thomas fought with raw fury, his blade cutting through the chaos, sweat and blood mingling on his brow. Aldrich's voice carried above the roar, "Stand firm, do not falter." William fought nearby, but his eyes shifted often toward Thomas, a storm brewing behind them. The narrator revealed how every strike felt like proof of his claim, each step on the battlefield echoing his birthright. Around him men fell, their cries swallowed by drums and steel, and the earth itself shook with the violence of war. The narrator told of Thomas stumbling into the heart of the fray where Merrick stood in black armor, his sneer sharp as a blade. "You dare wear the blood of kings?" Merrick shouted, striking forward with ruthless precision. Thomas blocked, arms trembling, answering, "I wear truth, not lies." The narrator revealed sparks flying as steel clashed, each blow resounding like judgment itself. Merrick's voice was venom. "History remembers victors, not dreamers." Thomas's chest heaved as he fought, courage clawing against fear. Around them the battle blurred, but in that circle of blades, only destiny remained. The narrator described William stepping forward during the chaos. His blade suddenly turned against Thomas. "You cannot hold what you cannot protect," he hissed. Shock pierced deeper than any wound as Thomas staggered back, whispering, "You betray me?" William's face twisted. "I choose survival." The narrator revealed the sting of betrayal, burning Thomas's chest, heavier than the clash of armies. Aldrich roared, charging to shield him, but the moment cut like thunder, dividing trust forever. Rain began to fall, hissing against steel, as loyalty cracked and bloodline's weight grew heavier still. The narrator showed Thomas locked in a circle of storm and steel, his sword clashing with William's as lightning ripped the sky. Sparks flew as Aldrich fought to hold back soldiers breaking through the lines. Merrick's laughter echoed over the field, cruel and triumphant. Thomas shouted. "Blood may bind, but choice defines." His blade met William's in a thunderous strike that sent both reeling. The narrator revealed how war's chaos blurred into one truth: the heir's destiny could not be denied. Rain poured harder, drowning fire, washing stone and flesh alike in the colors of war. The narrator described dawn breaking over the battlefield, mist clinging to corpses and broken banners. Thomas stumbled forward, sword dragging in the mud, his chest heaving with exhaustion. Aldrich limped to his side, blood staining his armor, whispering, "The crown is yours, though victory tastes of ash." Thomas stared at the fallen, his voice hoarse. If this is triumph, then what is defeat? The narrator revealed the silence that followed battle, heavy as stone, broken only by crows circling overhead. History had been carved into blood and steel, and its weight pressed upon Thomas's soul. The narrator described the ruined fortress courtyard, where nobles knelt reluctantly before Thomas. Their jeweled cloaks were dirt-stained, their eyes filled with fear rather than loyalty. Thomas said, "You bow to blood, not to me." Merrick was dragged forward in chains, spitting venom. "You will choke on the crown as your father did." Thomas's jaw tightened, yet he answered, "Let history remember not a tyrant, but a man who bore its weight." The narrator revealed how silence held the air, every noble waiting to see if mercy or vengeance would define their new king. The narrator told of William brought before Thomas, his hands bound, eyes burning with bitterness. Thomas's voice cracked as he asked, "Why betray me?" William answered, "Because power devours all, even brothers in arms." Aldrich stood behind, blade ready, but Thomas raised his hand. "No," he said, "betrayal lives long, but mercy may outlast it." The narrator revealed William's sneer fading into a hollow silence as chains dragged him away. The choice hung heavy, carving Thomas not just as a warrior, but as a ruler who bore his crown with scars of mercy. The narrator described the coronation chamber, stripped of grandeur, only flickering torches casting trembling shadows. A golden crown was placed on Thomas's head, its weight heavier than any steel. Father Gregory's voice echoed, "By blood and by burden, you are king." Thomas's hands clenched the arms of the throne, his gaze distant as though staring through time itself. The narrator revealed the chamber filled not with cheers but with silence, each noble haunted by the cost. The crown glittered faintly in the light, yet its shine could not pierce the shadows clinging to the throne. The narrator showed the final image of Thomas walking alone through the battlefield ruins, smoke rising in the distance. His sword trailed in the dirt, the crown glinting faintly in dawn's light. He whispered, "This kingdom is won, yet never truly mine." A blood-stained letter slipped from his hand, carried by the wind across the graves of fallen soldiers. The narrator revealed silence swallowing the land, leaving only the echo of history's choice. The king's secret heir was no longer hidden, but his reign began under the weight of ghosts that would never let him go.